Hi guys, and welcome to another design handbook tutorial. Recently I've been looking at a lot of black and white photos and I wanted to replicate the dramatic and breathtaking effect that these photographers were using. However, I quickly realized that simply switching on the black and white filter just wasn't going to cut it. It didn't even come close to matching the striking images I saw on the internet. So I googled and tried a lot of tutorials and techniques, and I think I've come up with a good solution, and more importantly, it is easily adaptable to different photos. A large portion of the techniques I've used were found from a video called Creating Stunning Black and White Photos by Tutvid, but I've added a few of my own artistic techniques. We'll be creating the image you see in front of you, and here it is before all the editing. You can use this technique on color photos, but the adjustments could easily be adapted to black and white photos as well. The first step is to open up your image in Camera Raw. You can do this in a few ways. You can use Adobe Bridge to open it in Camera Raw and tell it to import it into Photoshop, or you can set your Photoshop to open up all images with Camera Raw like I have here. Once you've opened your image in Camera Raw, the first step is to reduce the contrast. Here I've already got it set to -50, and you want it to set it as low as you can because we want to do most of the editing in Photoshop and not in Camera Raw. So just click Open Image, and now you should have your image open inside Photoshop. Once you've opened your image in Photoshop, we're going to add a curved adjustment layer to the photo. This adjustment layer will aim to add contrast back into the photo, even though we just took it away in Camera Raw. This is because the curved adjustment layer gives us much more control over how the photo will look. And as you can see from the adjustment layer, I'm dragging the curve to darken the shadows and boost the highlights in the photo. Each photo is different and you can adjust the curve however you see fit. Once you're done with the adjustment layer, we're going to merge all the previous layers into a new layer. And how you do this is selecting all the layers below. You hold Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E, and that will create a new layer that has merged all the previous layers that you've selected. Now we're going to use this new layer to sharpen our image. First, we're going to go to Filter, Other, and High Pass. Now with this one, we want to set it somewhere between 8 to 15 pixels. Hit Enter. Now change your blending mode to Soft Light, and change the opacity to about somewhere between 50 to 60%. At this point, it's a good idea to save the work that you've done. This new layer that we've created helps to sharpen and increase the contrast in our photo. You might not be able to see it in this video, but if you turn your layer on and off, you should see that the image is much more focused and there's a lot more detail present in the new photo. Now we're going to turn our color photo into a black and white photo. We're going to use the black and white adjustments layer from the adjustments panel, but we'll be using our own custom settings. Each photo is different, but through experimenting and playing around with different photos, you should figure out how each color affects your photo. For this particular photo, we're going to enter in all the settings that I'm using here, but you can experiment and try out your own settings if you really want to. So for red, we're going to use 25. Yellow is set to 185. Greens are at 72. Cyans at -111. Blues at -197. And magentas at -25. Great, so our image is in black and white, but it's not really striking like the images I saw on the internet. It's missing a lot of contrast and nothing really sticks out. So we're going to just edit this image now and give it contrast and make it stand out. The first step is to add a levels adjustment layer. And all we want to do with this layer is set the blending mode to soft light and reduce the opacity to anywhere between 30 to 40%. Okay, so that added a little bit of contrast. Now we're going to add even more by adding a gradient map, and we want to select the black to white gradient, and you want to set the blending mode to soft light as well. Make sure that the gradient map is on top of all the other adjustment layers, and reduce the opacity to about 30%. We're going to take this one step further and add a selective color adjustment layer. And we want to switch the colors to whites and then we'll adjust the black slider up and down for desired effect. In this one, I want to contrast his mask against a much more white wall, so I've reduced the amount of black in the photo. The next layer we're going to add will allow us to manually burn and dodge to darken or highlight areas of interest on our photo. To do this, just create a brand new layer and fill it with 50% grey. Now set this layer to a blending mode of soft light, and just use your burn and dodge tool to manually highlight or darken areas of interest on your photo. Okay, so if you don't know, the dodge tool is actually used to brighten and the burn tool is used to darken. What I want to do right now with this photo is to increase the contrast between the mask and the wall behind him. So what I'm going to do is actually brighten up his beard first. So select the dodge tool. Remember not to use too high of a setting. Right now I've got the exposure set to 9%, and the beard is already kind of towards the lighter end of the spectrum, so I'll select highlights to specifically target the wider areas of the beard, and I'll just paint over them lightly. Don't go too crazy because it might cause too much brightness in the photo. If you turn your new layer on and off, you should notice a change in the beard. It might not show up that well in the video, but in your Photoshop it will make quite a drastic change. So the next thing I want to do is actually brighten up the wall itself. So I will be using the same dodge tool that I used just on the beard, and I want to lightly paint on the wall just to increase the contrast between the dark mask and the white wall behind him. You should start to notice that the mask will feel much more alive and is coming towards me. It adds a greater sense of depth to the photo. It's a good idea to continually turn the new layer on and off to check the changes that you've made and whether or not there's something that you like. You could spend hours painting in the changes that you want to your photo, but for the tutorial's sake, that's all I'm going to do. Before moving on to the next step, it's a good idea to have your image looking exactly the way you want it to. The next step is just merging and sharpening the final image. Okay, to merge the entire picture, we're going to use the shortcut that we used early in the tutorial. So select all your layers, Control, Alt, Shift and E. Now convert this new layer using Filter, Other, High Pass, but this time we're going to use a setting of 1 to 3 pixels. I'm going to use 1 pixel for my photo, and then set the blending mode to soft light. You can then reduce the opacity or leave it as it is, and that's the final image. I hope you guys enjoyed this video tutorial. It's my first one that I've ever created, and there's a lot of room for improvement, but in the future I hope to provide much more better content and much better video tutorials. Well, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you're able to use these techniques and tips I taught you and apply them to your own images. I really love this specific technique because it's really adaptable and it can apply to many different situations and many different images. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to visit my actual website, which is designhandbook.net. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe.